Grayson Duke slammed the brakes just a second too late. The sickening crunch of metal on metal echoed through the underground parking lot of the downtown Lexington Plaza, followed by a sharp gasp, definitely not his. His jaw clenched as he threw the gear into park and swung open his car door, heart already sinking. He tapped the back of a small sedan, nothing major, but enough to leave a mark. "Seriously?" a woman's voice shot out. Grayson rounded the back of his glossy black Mercedes, his designer shoes crunching on scattered gravel. There she was standing in front of the dented bumper of her car, arms crossed, eyes flaring. "I am so sorry," he said instantly, raising his hands. "I didn't see you pulling in." Her expression didn't soften. "Because you were busy checking your phone." "I wasn't. I swear. He paused, actually taking in her face now. She wasn't just annoyed. She was stunning. Her hazel eyes burned with frustration, her dark curls piled wildly on top of her head like she'd rushed out of the house 10 minutes too late. She wore a faded bookstore t-shirt and jeans that hugged her curves like a second skin. He blinked. "I'll pay for everything. Insurance, repairs, whatever you need." She rolled her eyes. "I don't have time for this. I'm already late." "For what?" She gave him a look. "A job interview." Grayson reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a sleek black card. "Take this. Call my assistant. She'll handle the repairs." The woman looked at the card, then back at him like he just handed her a napkin. "Keep it. I'm not calling anyone's assistant." He blinked. "You're seriously not gonna let me fix this?" "I don't have time to argue, Mr. Grayson," he said. "Grayson Duke." Something shifted in her eyes. Not recognition, but suspicion. "Of course it is." He narrowed his eyes, amused by how unimpressed she was. Most people flinched when they realized who he was, the founder of Duke Ventures, one of the fastest-growing private investment firms in the state. But not her. She reached for her door handle. "Wait," he said. "At least let me walk you to wherever you're going. It's the least I can do." She hesitated. "You really think I'm just gonna let the guy who hit my car walk me somewhere?" "I'm not dangerous," he said, holding back a grin. "You drive a car that costs more than my rent, and you don't watch where you're going. That's dangerous enough." He laughed, and to his surprise she cracked the smallest smile. "I'm Tessa Sawyer," she said finally, pulling her bag over her shoulder. "And if you really want to make this right, you can help me find the elevator. This place is a maze." He offered his arm. "That I can do." As they walked through the garage, dodging cars and arguing over which level the lobby was on, Grayson tried to remember the last time he met a woman who made him feel completely thrown off his game. Tessa didn't know who he was, or if she did, she didn't care. She was sharp, sarcastic, and totally uninterested in his polished charm. They reached the elevator, and she pressed the button. "Thanks for not being a total jerk about the car. Thanks for not yelling at me longer than necessary." Her lips twitched. "You're lucky I'm in a rush. Let me make it up to you," he said. "Dinner. My treat." She looked at him like he just told her he wanted to buy the moon. "You hit my car and now you want to take me on a date. I want a chance to apologize properly. That's all." The elevator dinged. She stepped in but didn't hit a button. "I'll think about it," she said. "But if you ghost me, I'm keying your car." He grinned. "Fair enough." She gave him a small wave as the doors closed. Grayson stood there for a long second, staring at the elevator, feeling something strange settle in his chest. It wasn't just guilt. It wasn't just attraction. It was something else, something rare. He didn't even know her last name until he glanced down at the file folder she dropped near the car and forgotten. Her resume peeked out from the edge. Tessa Sawyer. He should have turned it in. Instead, he took it with him. Tessa didn't get the job. The manager at the publishing firm told her she was overqualified and underdressed, which was code for, "We've already picked someone else." She walked out of the glass building deflated, annoyed, and starving. Then she saw it. A bouquet of sunflowers, her favorite, leaning against the hood of her car. A small note stuck between the stems. Sorry again. Dinner tonight? 7? I promise it's not a trick. Grayson, underneath the note, was a reservation card for a restaurant she'd only ever seen in magazines. Millionaire. Tessa stared at it, heart pounding. She should say no. She should ignore it. But she didn't. At exactly 7, she walked through the doors of Millionaire in the only black dress she owned. The host greeted her like she was royalty and led her to a secluded table where Grayson was waiting, sipping something golden in a crystal glass. He stood when he saw her. You came, he said, his voice warm. You left flowers on my car. That's bold. I figured I owed you something more than insurance. She sat down, folding her napkin. Are you always this persistent? He leaned in. Only when I meet someone who makes me forget what I was doing 5 minutes ago. She paused. Is that a line? No, he said. It's the truth. They ordered dinner. He didn't even blink when she picked the filet mignon, and the conversation flowed easier than she expected. They talked about books, music, how she hated the new trend of influencers pretending to read Jane Austen. He confessed he hadn't read a novel since college. She teased him for it, and he laughed. She couldn't remember the last time someone actually made her laugh like that. Halfway through dessert, she asked, So what do you really do? He hesitated, then said, I own a company. What kind of company? Investments. She raised a brow. Like stocks and stuff? Kind of. I help businesses grow. Fund startups. That kind of thing. She nodded slowly. So basically you're rich. He tilted his head. Does that bother you? No, she said. But it explains the car. I like nice things, he said. But I like real things more. She looked at him for a long second, unsure how to respond. Then he reached across the table, brushing his fingers against hers. I want to see you again. Tessa's heart thudded. She wasn't sure how this had happened. How a minor car accident had landed her here with a stranger who was charming, attractive, and apparently loaded. But as her fingers curled around his, she realized something else. She didn't want this night to end. I'm not used to this, Tessa said, her voice quiet as she stepped out onto the private terrace overlooking the city skyline. The lights stretched endlessly, golden and glittering like a sea of stars flipped upside down. Grayson followed behind her, hands in the pockets of his tailored coat. Not used to what? This. She gestured vaguely to the luxurious rooftop, the marble floors, the live string quartet playing softly behind the glass. Being treated like I belong somewhere like this. He stepped closer, the air between them charged but fragile. You do. She turned to face him. You don't even know me. Grayson's gaze didn't waver. Not yet. But I want to. Tessa looked away, the wind tugging gently at her curls. I'm not the kind of woman who fits into this world. You're wrong, he said. You walked into Millionaire like you owned the place. That's because I was pretending not to be terrified. He smiled, not with arrogance or amusement, but with something softer. You didn't look scared. You looked like you were deciding whether or not to run. I still might. He stepped in front of her, his voice dropping. Then let me give you a reason to stay. Before she could respond, the terrace door opened behind them. Mr. Duke, a man in a dark suit said, holding a phone discreetly. Apologies. There's a situation with the Santiago proposal. They're pushing the meeting to tonight. Grayson's jaw tightened for the briefest second before he turned back to Tessa. Would you hate me if I said I have to leave? Probably, she said, though her tone was dry. Are you going to disappear like every rich guy in a movie who gets bored and ghosts the girl? I'm not disappearing, he said. I just need an hour. 2, max. She tilted her head. And if I'm gone when you come back? He looked her dead in the eye. Then I'll find you. Tessa's chest tightened, and she hated that a line like that could still feel like it meant something. She nodded once, then watched him disappear through the glass doors. She lingered a moment longer, staring out at the city. She didn't leave. Grayson didn't return in 2 hours. He returned in 3, breathless and without a tie, eyes scanning the terrace like he expected her to be gone. But she was there, arms folded, leaning against the railing. "You're late," she said. He exhaled a laugh, more relief than humor. "I know. You stayed. I figured if you were lying, you wouldn't come back at all." He stepped toward her. "I would have come back even if it took all night." Tessa narrowed her eyes. "You really talk like that all the time?" "No," he said. "Only with you." She blinked, caught off guard by the honesty in his voice. "I want to show you something," he added, holding out his hand. "Is this where you reveal you're actually a magician?" "Worse," he said. "I'm a man with a helicopter." Her eyebrows lifted. "You're joking." "I'm not. I'm not getting in a helicopter with a man I barely know. You've already had dinner with me. That's more dangerous." She hesitated, but then her hand found his. They walked through a separate elevator tucked behind the wine cellar. When the doors opened again, they stepped out onto a rooftop helipad, where a sleek black helicopter waited, rotors idling gently. "You're actually serious," she said over the noise. He helped her into the seat, secured her headset, and climbed in beside her. The pilot gave a thumbs up. Within seconds they were lifting off. The city unfolded beneath them, glowing and endless. Tessa pressed her hand to the glass, the wind rushing past. "This doesn't feel real." Grayson leaned toward her. "It's real." They flew in silence for several minutes, the city becoming smaller as they veered northwest. "Where are we going?" she asked. "There's a vineyard about 20 miles out," he answered. "They bottle a sparkling wine that tastes like spring. I keep a case there." She glanced at him. "You keep wine at a vineyard? Why not? Most people keep wine in their kitchen." "I'm not most people." She laughed, then caught herself. "You really don't do normal, do you?" "I've tried. It didn't suit me." The helicopter began its descent, landing on a gravel pad beside a long stone building nestled in the hills. No lights except a lantern flickering beside a carved wooden door. Inside, it was quiet and warm. The owner greeted Grayson like an old friend and disappeared after wordlessly placing 2 glasses and a chilled bottle on the table. They sat by a low burning fire, the scent of cedar and crushed grapes hanging in the air. Tessa took a sip and closed her eyes. "Okay. I get it now. This is better than normal." Grayson watched her, his expression unreadable. "You don't talk about yourself much." "That's because I don't have stories about private helicopters and vineyard wine. I'm not asking for stories like mine." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "My dad left when I was 9. My mom worked nights at a diner and days doing freelance copy editing. I learned early how to stretch money and expectations." Grayson leaned forward. "What happened to her?" "She passed 2 years ago. Cancer." Tessa took another sip, her hand steady. "I took care of her toward the end. That's why I'm still trying to get my career back on track." "I'm sorry," he said, voice low. "You don't have to be. But I am." She looked up, eyes clear. "You've got 1,000 things pulling at you, deals, meetings, wine cellars, and you're sitting here listening like none of that exists." "It doesn't," he said. "Not right now." Her breath caught for a second, but she recovered. "You're dangerous." "So I've heard." They didn't kiss, not yet. But something shifted in the silence between them, something that felt heavier than chemistry. When he flew her back hours later, the city was asleep. He walked her to her car, the one with the dent still in the bumper. "This isn't over," he said. "I didn't say it was." He hesitated. "Can I see you tomorrow? I work a shift at the library. Then I'm free. I'll pick you up." She shook her head. "You don't know where I live." I'll figure it out. She unlocked her door, then looked at him one last time. Don't make promises you can't keep, Grayson. I never do. She drove off, her taillights disappearing into the night. Grayson stood there for a while, the city wind tugging at his coat, and for the first time in months, maybe years, he felt something more than momentum. He felt possibility. Tessa leaned her temple against the cold window of the town car, trying not to look impressed as the driver eased through the narrow street toward her apartment. The morning sun was still climbing, casting warm gold across the weathered brick buildings and shuttered storefronts. She hadn't expected a car to pick her up, certainly not one with stitched leather seats and a driver who greeted her by name. Grayson hadn't even asked for her address. That unsettled her more than she cared to admit. The car pulled up to the curb in front of her building. She stepped out, tugging her cardigan tighter, and found him standing at the top of her stoop with a paper bag in one hand and a bouquet of purple hyacinths in the other. You're early, she said. You're impossible to find flowers for, he replied, extending the bouquet. Everything else felt too obvious. She took them gingerly, eyeing the soft petals. These are my favorite. I know. She narrowed her eyes. How? You left a binder in the back seat last night, he said. It had a pressed hyacinth taped to your calendar. I guessed. You went through my planner? I opened it to see if there was a name. I stopped when I found the flower. She studied him for a long beat, then motioned to the bag. What's that? 2 croissants. 1 almond, 1 plain. And a thermos of strong coffee with just a splash of cream. No sugar. She blinked. How did you? You ordered the same thing at La Mer. There were no croissants at La Mer. I asked the chef. He told me what you requested when you reserved the table. I didn't reserve the table. You did. Through the flowers. Her lips parted slightly. You're terrifying. I'm thorough. She couldn't help but laugh, just once. You're also lucky I'm not the kind of person who gets weirded out by this level of surveillance. There's still time. They sat on her stoop, the city slowly waking around them. A bike courier sped past, and a child across the street tried to coerce a pigeon into being his pet. Tessa sipped from the thermos, surprised at how good the coffee was. He'd gotten the ratio right. You don't have to keep showing up like this, she said eventually. I know. She glanced at him. So why do it? Because I've had 100 conversations this week. And the only one I can remember word for word is the one we had on a vineyard floor. She looked away, swallowing. I'm not trying to impress you with money, he added. I know how that looks. Then what are you trying to do? He leaned back against the railing. Figure out why this feels different. She didn't answer right away. Then, you're not the only one wondering. They sat in silence until her phone buzzed. She checked the screen and groaned. I'm going to be late. Library shift? She nodded. And I can't show up with a ridiculously expensive bouquet. I'll be accused of having a secret admirer. You do. I don't need rumors. Then I'll carry it. She gave him a look. You're not coming in with me. I wasn't planning to. Good. He took the flowers anyway. They walked the 4 blocks to the library together, passing the same dog walker from the day before and a woman dragging a suitcase with one wheel bent at the wrong angle. Tessa kept her pace brisk, as if she could outwalk the odd pull in her chest. At the staff entrance, she paused. You're not going to show up tomorrow morning with a violinist, are you? Depends. Do you like string quartets? Don't push it. He held out the hyacinths, softer now in the daylight. I'll see you tonight. I didn't agree to that. You didn't say no. She took the flowers, and this time, she didn't argue. Grayson watched her disappear through the door before turning back toward the street. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. Back inside, Tessa slipped the bouquet into the breakroom vase and tried to focus on the circulation log. But every time she looked at the clock, she saw his face on the terrace, the way he looked at her like she was the only thing that made sense in a room full of glass. At 4, she stepped outside for her break and found a small white box leaning against the front gate. No name. Just a navy ribbon tied in a clean knot. Inside was a single silver bookmark engraved with a quote. She didn't need rescuing. Just someone who saw her clearly. She closed the box fast, heart thudding. He'd been listening. That evening, he didn't take her to dinner. He took her to a second-hand bookstore tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop, the kind of place with creaky floors and handwritten signs. "This is where I come when I can't think," he said. "You read?" "No," he said. "But I like the smell." She wandered through the aisles, trailing her fingers across cracked spines and faded covers. Grayson followed, quiet and watchful. When she reached the back wall, she turned. "Why me?" He didn't pretend to misunderstand. "I've met people who wanted things from me," he said. "You don't. That's not a reason. You make me forget what I'm supposed to be." Tessa exhaled, her voice softer than she intended. "That sounds dangerous." "It is." She looked up at him, and this time, she didn't step back. He leaned in, slow and careful, and kissed her like he wasn't sure if he was dreaming. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "You're going to ruin me." "No," he said. "I'm going to love you." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Because for the first time in her life, she was starting to believe someone might mean it. Grayson's penthouse was unusually quiet for a Friday night. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city, its lights blinking like a restless heartbeat. His glass of bourbon sat untouched on the table behind him. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was suspended. Like everything was waiting to shift. He turned when the elevator chimed. Tessa stepped out, holding her coat closed with one hand, her other clutching a thin folder. "I didn't come for champagne or rooftop views," she said, walking past him. "I didn't expect you to," he replied, watching her cross the room. She dropped the folder on the table. "That's the manuscript I've been working on. I thought you should see it." He picked it up slowly. "You wrote a novel?" "I've been writing it for 3 years." His gaze flicked up. "Why give it to me?" "Because yesterday, one of your executives called me. Offered me a position on your publishing board." She folded her arms. "I want to know if that offer was yours. Or if you were trying to fix something you thought was broken." Grayson set the folder down, careful not to crease it. "I didn't put anyone up to that. I didn't even know they reached out." "Then why now?" she asked. "Why are doors opening after years of hearing you're not a fit? Maybe because they finally saw what I did. You barely know me. I know you rewrite your sentences 3 times before you like them. I know you hate the ending of anything that ties itself up too neatly. And I know you've been carrying stories inside you for too long without anyone to tell them to." He stepped toward her. "That's not nothing." Tessa's voice was quiet. "I didn't come here for a speech." "Then what did you come for?" "I needed to see if this," she motioned between them, "was still about us, or if I'm just another moment in your life you'll explain away when something shinier comes along." Grayson's jaw tightened. "You think I see you as temporary? I think you've spent your entire life getting what you want. I don't know if you know how to fight to keep it." He stepped closer, his voice low. "I've built companies from the ground up. Navigated lawsuits, market crashes, betrayal from people I trusted. But nothing scared me more than the thought of losing you." She didn't respond. "I wasn't looking for this," he said. "I wasn't looking for anyone. But then you slammed into my world with a dented bumper and no patience, and suddenly, nothing else made sense." Her throat worked once. "I don't want to be a project." "You're not," he said. "You're the one thing I didn't know I needed. And I'm done pretending like I can go back to life before you." The silence held, thick with the weight of everything that had built between them. Then Tessa stepped forward, slowly. "I don't need you to fix me. I don't want to fix you," he said. I want to walk beside you. In whatever form that takes. Her eyes searched his, and for a long moment, everything else fell away. Finally, she said, I still think you're reckless. I am. And spoiled. He nodded. Painfully. But, she said softer now, you make me feel like I matter. Not just in the room, but in the world. You do. She reached for his hand. I got offered a publishing deal, she said. From someone who read the sample I left at the library. They want to buy the book. His eyes widened with real surprise. That's incredible. I haven't said yes yet. Why not? Because I didn't want to say yes until I knew I could do it on my own. You can't, he said. You already have. She smiled, then added, but I'd still like you to read it. He picked up the folder again, this time with reverence. I'll read every word. That night they didn't go out. They stayed in, curled on the oversized couch beneath a wool blanket, her feet tucked beneath his leg, the manuscript open between them. He read aloud until his voice was hoarse, and she teased him for mispronouncing a character's name. In the weeks that followed, Tessa's book went into production. She signed the contract herself, no favors, no backdoor calls. Grayson insisted she use his driver on launch day. She refused and took the subway instead. They moved in together 6 months later, not into his penthouse, but into a brownstone she picked, one with uneven floors and a cracked fireplace mantel she swore she'd fix herself. Grayson learned how to brew coffee exactly the way she liked it. Tessa learned that he couldn't cook to save his life but would always try if she looked even slightly tired. On the night of her first book's release party, he stood beside her in a charcoal suit, holding a glass of champagne he never drank. When the crowd thinned and the lights dimmed, he led her out to the balcony of the event hall. I have something for you, he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. She sighed. If it's another first edition, I'm going to run. He held up a small box, velvet and dark. Grayson, he opened it before she could finish. Inside was a ring. Simple, elegant, with a single stone and a band that curved like a question mark. You crashed into my life when I least expected it, he said. And I've been breathless ever since. Will you marry me? Tessa stared at him, heart racing so fast she couldn't feel her hands. Then she laughed a deep, stunned, joyous laugh. Only if you promise never to stop reading my drafts, she said. I'll read every last one. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Then yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and the city behind them seemed to hold its breath. They didn't need perfect. They didn't need predictable. They just needed each other, and the story they were still writing together. The rain started as a fine mist, soft enough to ignore, but it clung to Tessa's curls as she stood on the cobblestone path behind the brownstone, watching the garden lights flicker on beneath the overcast sky. She tightened the belt of her robe and exhaled slowly, the air cool and damp against her skin. Inside, the soft shuffle of pages echoed from the living room. I didn't think you'd actually do it, she said, turning toward the open French doors. Grayson looked up from the manuscript in his lap, his hair tousled and damp from his early morning run. Do what? Start reading the second book before I was finished editing it. I waited a whole week after you typed the last chapter. That's restraint. She crossed her arms. I still have notes to add. He closed the folder. I wanted to read it the way you wrote it. Not the way you revised it to impress people. She walked back inside, her bare feet silent on the tile. You think I write to impress people? I think you write because there's a part of you that doesn't know how not to. He looked at her for a long moment. And I think you still don't know how brilliant you are. She sat beside him on the couch, tucking her legs beneath her. I'm learning. He pulled her close, resting his chin against the top of her head. You don't have to learn alone. Tessa closed her eyes. You're not tired of me yet? You're the first person I've ever wanted to wake up next to more than once. She tilted her head to meet his gaze. Even when I hog the covers? Especially then. A knock at the front door cut through the quiet. "I'll get it," Grayson said, rising and disappearing around the corner. When he returned, he held a narrow envelope in his hand, his brow lifted in surprise. "From the Historical Society." Tessa sat up straighter. "Did they finally respond?" He handed it over. She tore it open, eyes scanning quickly. When she reached the last line, her hand flew to her mouth. "They approved the grant," she whispered. "They're funding the restoration of the Easton House." Grayson's eyes sparked. "The entire project?" "Every phase. Full backing." He pulled her into a spin before she could react, her laughter ringing out against the walls. "You did this yourself," he said, setting her down again. "You researched, applied, pitched. They didn't even know who you were dating." "I used a different last name," she admitted. "You used your own. The only one that ever mattered." Grayson touched her cheek. "You've always been more than enough." She leaned into him, her voice quiet. "I want to keep my name when we get married." He didn't flinch. "Good. I want to marry you, not rewrite you." She smiled, and this time, it reached all the way through her. Later that week, they stood beneath a canopy of ivy and string lights in the garden behind the brownstone. No ballroom, no rented rooftop. Just the scent of fresh lavender from the planters she'd arranged that morning and the muted hum of jazz from the old record player. Tessa wore a simple ivory dress, soft and flowing, her curls pinned loosely with silver combs. Grayson wore a navy suit, no tie, sleeves rolled once at the cuffs. Their vows weren't rehearsed. "I didn't know what I was missing until you hit my car," he said, voice steady. She laughed, blinking fast. "And I didn't know how to trust someone until you offered to fix something without expecting anything in return," she said. "Even when I didn't make it easy, you made it worth it." They kissed before the officiant had even finished the last line. No photographers. No crowd. Just them, and two close friends acting as witnesses, and the sound of the leaves rustling like they were applauding. Afterward, they danced barefoot on the flagstone path, Grayson humming along with the record, Tessa's head resting against his chest. "I never thought I'd belong to someone," she murmured. "You don't," he said. "You belong with someone." She looked up. "There's a difference? With you, everything is different." They left the next morning for a quiet week at a converted lighthouse off the coast of Maine. Tessa brought a red leather notebook and scribbled ideas between walks along the cliffs. Grayson cooked badly, and she teased him every time his omelets turned into scrambled eggs. When they returned, he surprised her with a tiny office tucked into the back corner of the brownstone, her name etched on the frosted glass door. "Saw your editorial," it read. "You built this?" she whispered. "I had help. But yes." Her eyes filled. "You remembered." "I remember everything you say," he replied. In the months that followed, her book climbed the charts slowly, then all at once. She turned down a television adaptation when the studio suggested rewriting her female lead as someone more palatable. Grayson stood beside her through every decision, never steering, only supporting. She kept her office. He kept the penthouse, using it now only for meetings and the occasional city escape. Their real life was in the brownstone, where the floors creaked and the windows stuck, and the garden bloomed out of control. 3 years later they sat on that same stoop, the morning sun warming their backs. Tessa balanced their daughter on her knee, the baby's tiny fingers curled around a wooden teether. Grayson offered her a cup of coffee, careful not to spill a drop. "You still think I talk too much?" he asked. "Yes," Tessa said, smiling. "But now I find it charming." He leaned over and kissed her temple. "You know what I find charming?" She looked down at their daughter. "Her? She's a close second. Then what's first?" "You. Always you." Tessa rested her head against his shoulder, the soft sound of the city waking up around them. And for the first time in her life, she didn't wonder how long happiness would last. Because she knew. This was home. Forever.